And welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. And here we are once again to put you to bed uh, after having an exciting March Madness of sports films. What is this time around's theme, Brandon? And what movie did you subject us to this week?
Well, just so that we know it's right, Jacob, what is this month's theme? It's your theme.
This month's theme?
Mm-hmm.
Antique April. And Brandon just made it under the wire with this movie for the time period we chose to qualify as antique.
Yep, 50 years. So 1973 is 51 years. So this time we are looking at a film, a Woody Allen film called Sleeper, starring Woody Allen and Diane Keaton. A film about an individual who is thawed out of cryogenic freeze in the future, and he must try to resolve his awkwardness as well as deal with an oppressive government regime. So that's pretty much the basics of it. So let's go ahead. Actually, you know what? Since I just had you speak in there, Jacob, was this your first time watching Sleeper?
No, it wasn't. It was actually, strangely enough, I think this was a favorite of my dad's. He was not a big Woody Allen fan overall. I definitely was much more into his movies, but my dad did enjoy this one, and I think he's the one who showed it to me first a little while back. This may be my third viewing. It's certainly the first one in a while. I've not seen it very many times. I liked the film. It was never my favorite. A lot of people hold this up as like one of his funniest films. And it definitely has a lot of good, solid humor to it. It's also his only sci-fi movie and one of his more overtly political ones. And so it stands out for a number of reasons. But really, I find it a good, solid entry in his catalog. And I've long said a bad Woody Allen film is still a pretty good film. So a good, solid Woody Allen film is definitely a pretty good film. But I don't think I'm ever going to love this one. I may have appreciated it a little more this go around than I did the first time I saw it. I'm sure I did. I got a lot more of the references for one. So yeah, it's kind of fun to revisit it, and it gave me an excuse to watch my copy, so that was good.
All right. How about you, Tammy? Was this your first time watching Sleeper?
Yeah, it was. I think so, at least. I mean, this is something I think that my dad might have gotten into, but I don't remember ever seeing it, but he might have. I thought it was funny, kind of off the wall. Um, but you know, it definitely had some good laughs in it and everything. So yeah, it wasn't bad to watch. So
All right. Well, thank you. And Dave, was this your first time with Sleeper?
This is my first time watching it in its entirety. For some reason, I seem to remember something about them going and grabbing the nose or whatnot, which we'll get into later. Why a nose has anything to do with this movie. But yeah, it's hard to say with Woody Allen because it's hard to like his odditiness. He is very odd, and I get that. And I've seen one other of his earlier films, thanks to you, Brandon. I think it was Take Two for the Money or something like that, wasn't it?
Take the money and run. Yeah.
Take the money and run. That, yeah. And he's just a very odd character, and I could definitely see why you think that he had some Charlie Chaplin-esque qualities in him, especially when he first came out of the cryogenic thing with fucking tinfoil. My God.
Yeah, that was. I got the joke better after multiple viewings, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. But in any case, I mean, for its time, I do like the fact that they went that far in the future with it, because as we well know, even Soylent Green's date has come up, from that time period,
Although it is depressing to think we're a quarter of the way there already.
Right?
Yeah. Now, I will say that this one has one significant date that's about to happen, but at least so far as the date that they're in now, we got a little ways to go.
But it was entertaining for what it was. I mean, Diane Keaton's cute in here. So I do think that she was very pretty at one point in time. Of course, when you see her nowadays, it's kind of like you want to think of her with wasn't she in Something's Gotta Give?
Maybe
with Jack Nicholson. Yeah, I do believe that she was in there with him. So seeing the contrast of her being young there, and then seeing her much later in a movie much later is different. And I know that Woody Allen has always looked like he's already balding.
Yeah. So he never really got that far beyond that, really. He's still got a little bit of hair left on the top of his head these days, and it's a couple of years after this took place. As far as like 73, it's been 51 years.
But it's entertaining. I mean, it's an interesting futuristic thing. I mean, some of the vehicles in here kind of remind me of that which you see in some earlier British stuff, with the funky looking dune buggies, and of course, if you see stuff in like later science fiction films, they haven't really changed all that much, So
very stylized. Oh yeah, let me put the brand up here.
Of course, I wouldn't mind an orgasmic chamber.
All right. Well,
what did they actually call it? Was the Orgasmatron?
Orgasmatron.
Yeah.
This is not my first time. My father was a huge fan of Woody Allen. At least that's what he would say. But my father would always say I'm a huge fan of an individual, even though he only really cared for a small portion of what they did. I look at Woody Allen's films as an eras, and the first era really was this slapsticky kind of Groucho Marx, the Marx Brothers meets Charlie Chaplin era, where you've got a lot of slapstick humor and a lot of witty dialogue. There's technically 7 films, but but Men of Crisis, the Harvey Wallinger story, was a TV movie that's been lost to the ages. So really the 6, though, are What's Up, Tiger Lily, Take the Money and Run, Bananas, Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask, Sleeper, and Love and Death. And then we get into a more like dramedy series as we go, with some exceptions. But I will say that of this era, Sleeper was always my favorite as a child, whereas Bananas was my father's favorite. But this was his favorite era of Woody Allen. He never got into the dramedies in the future, though he didn't take an exception with A Midsummer Night's Sex Comedy for some reason. But of this, I'm hoping to eventually cover most of these, except for What's Up, Tiger Lily, because I hate that film. But I do want to eventually come back to some of them. Take the Money and Run was a huge inspiration for Schusterman Levine, so I had to throw that one out there. But Bananas, if anything, will be worth coming back to. But this one definitely was one of my favorites as a kid. I loved it. It was what had me interested in Woody Allen in the first place. I really enjoyed some of the futurism, the big banana, for instance, in that scene, or some of the just over-the-top slapstick was really good. And as I watched it this time, I found a little bit more enjoyment from other areas of the film, such as the dialogue and some of the little references that we'll be talking about as we go. So one of the first things we'll talk about here is Woody Allen coming in and being actually, well, we get to a kind of a group of scientists doing some illegal experiments related to cryogenic sleep. They found this pod and they defrost Woody Allen like a TV dinner as he's covered with tinfoil. What did y'all think of that particular joke where they are unfreezing him?
Well, I think that's the first act of light comedy in the whole thing. Because at first you're looking at him and he's got the tinfoil around his feet and hands and around his whole face, and it's not until later that you realize, oh, okay, they're defrosting him, so
Yeah.
it's interesting to say the least.
I thought it was pretty funny too, and that's like, I don't know if I consciously was thinking TV dinner, but it makes sense when you put it that way.
See, it just came to me this time that was the joke, is that, because again, I mean,
Right.
only those of us, actually, I think all of us, I don't know, Dave, did they still do the foil over TV dinners for you? I know they did for me, and I'm sure Jacob had lived there. And I know, Tammy, you've seen it on TV dinners, where they did that. When you put them in the oven, you had to put the tinfoil over it.
Most of the TV dinners that we do, I know we stick them in the microwave. So oftentimes they've had plastic on top of them, and either you slit them or whatnot. But I remember back in the day with like maybe if you actually got one of those Meals on Wheels.
Yeah. And again, those things, the ones that you put in the oven, kind of went out in the like mid 80s. They stopped making them. So it went, I mean, I only remember them at the peak. I mean, like in the basic early time in my memory, because it would be like a cheap meal. They have the tinfoil over it that you put in the oven and go. I mean, but in the 70s, that was more of a mainstay. So I could see how they would look. It's like, yeah, this is how you thaw him. As you put him in the oven to cook and thaw out.
Well, I know you definitely do not want to put tinfoil in the microwave.
Oh, no.
Then it starts on fire.
But,
But in the conventional oven, that's a different story. I imagine because it's a slow burn, it actually helps, heat up things at given point in time, So I remember Sam's Club had the chicken pot pies.
See, there's something there because you had to put foil over that to keep it crispy on top.
Yep. So.
What about you, Tammy? Did you have any of those TV dinners with the foil?
TV dinners?
Yeah. Did you ever have any that had to be put in the oven with the tin foil over it? We're having to jog memories that are really far back, even for myself.
You're talking about TV dinners?
Yeah.
TV dinners that you would put in the conventional oven. And have to put
TV dinners.
But with tinfoil.
Yeah.
So you probably.
My mom didn't make them that often, but she made them every once in a while.
So you could get that joke then. But this is where we meet basically his character, which decided to go in because he had a stomach ulcer. But they had some complications with it and ended up freezing him cryogenically because of his aunt or something like that. Basically said, yeah, go ahead, freeze.
Well, and apparently they fixed his ulcer too, somewhere in there too. That's what those doctors were saying, something like, you did fix him, didn't you? Yes.
I like that it was just complications from a stomach ulcer. And he's a health food, and he owns a health food store, or owned really at this point. Which I do find it funny how they will talk about us how funny what is healthy applies, because they talked about well, what about fats and sugars? That's the healthy thing now,
right?
Even back then, I think that joke still fits very well today, because what we knew was healthy in the 80s is not the right thing now. So it's actually kind of funny how that is. I love that joke. Actually, part of it's true though, because the meats and fats are actually considered far healthier now than they were back then.
That definitely was one of, oh, here we go. Yeah. This morning for breakfast, he requested something called wheat germ, organic honey, and tiger. Oh, yes, those are the charm substances that some years ago were thought to contain life-preserving properties. You mean there was no deep fat, no steak or cream pies or hot fudge? Those were thought to be unhealthy, precisely the opposite of what we now know to be true. Yeah.
I also found it interesting that he's talking about those people were everybody you've known has been dead for hundreds of years, but they all ate organic rice. That was going to keep them alive for hundreds.
Right.
But there was a lot of slapstick comedy were those scenes when he was waking up.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I mean, a whole bunch of that. He wasn't speaking for the first part of the film, where he just was shuffling around half out of it because he's waking up and entering the scene, messing with the people and the security guards as they go in.
Right. Well, and the film clearly had a lot of homage to, I think you mentioned Charlie Chaplin earlier, and of course, Buster Keaton, Harold Lloyd, Laurel and Hardy, all of those, Marx Brothers. There's a lot of touchstones here with some of them.
And Alan has repeatedly stated that his top three influences for his early comedy were the Marx Brothers, the Three Stooges, and Charlie Chaplin.
Mm-hmm.
And you could see that definitely here.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think with the physical comedy, definitely people like Chaplin and Harpo Marx, and then the Stooges. And then like some of the one-liners, you could definitely see his admiration for Groucho's type of humor.
And he was good friends with Groucho up to till Groucho's death, which was there. But which had started as basically him just expressing how much admiration he had, and eventually turned into a friendship in Groucho's later age. But they also, when they talk about things for the future, one event that did come close was apparently a lot of the stuff and knowledge was lost because there was a huge world war, a nuclear war.
Right.
It happened around this time period, a little bit in the future, because I think it was like 100 years back from the 200 years ago, so about 2074 or a little bit prior to that. But there are definitely threats of that these days, so it could possibly happen. Not sure I want that to happen. But
yeah,
definitely there. And apparently the world is ruled by an oppressive regime, and the scientists are a part of a revolution, and they want Woody Allen's character to be a part of that because he's not logged in the database because he is so old, so he can't be tracked as easily.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of fun things like the whole things like here, smoke some of this. Tobacco is one of the healthiest things for your body.
Right.
Or where that looks like they're going to give him an injection, but instead they're giving it to the plant.
Oh, I did like that. Was a good sight gag. That huge needle and the look of terror on his face.
And during that whole orientation period, they also did the thing where they had the picture joke.
Yes.
They're showing like Stalin, and
then he was a communist. I was not too crazy about him. Had a bad mustache, a lot of bad habits. But he had some really
like that famous TV chef.
Yes. What was some of the other? Here's some girls burning a brassiere. You notice it's a very small fire. I don't know what he's like. This is a photograph of Norman Mailer. He was a very great writer. He donated his ego to the Harvard Medical School for study. But
he was making stuff up as he went along.
Pretty much, yeah. Although some of it was, close. Like
his opinions on the matters, and I think he was giving them wrong information on purpose. Really.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like Scott Fitzgerald over here, very romantic writer, big with English majors, college girls, nymphomaniacs.
I like that wild world. Oh, God.
What's up?
I thought it was funny about the things that were now good for you.
Oh, yeah.
So, like tobacco and some foods that we know aren't good for us.
And when they showed the clip of the wild world of sports, like we theorize that people who have been bad will be forced to watch this.
Yes. That was great. I was trying to find that exact quote. Here we go. Yeah, so two weeks in a row where we have actual footage of Howard Cosell.
Yes.
But and they show it. It's like, at first we didn't know exactly what this was, but we've developed a theory. We feel that when citizens in your society were guilty of a crime against the state, they were forced to watch this. And Miles just pauses for a minute. Yes, that's exactly what it was.
But
yeah.
Before we move into further there, did any of y'all have anything else that you would like to go over for this whole orientation period, waking up, getting oriented to the world at large?
All right.
Not really. I mean, there was definitely a lot of goofy stuff that he was saying during orientation, and a lot of it kind of just went over my head a little bit because of what he was just naming off, because they were trying to learn stuff about stuff that was in the 70s, and they were showing him like Nixon, how they thought that that he might have been a president at one point in time, and they also showed him a broadcast of a sporting event, and it mentioned Muhammad Ali, and they were like, so we think that this was something to show people up until they were punished or something like that. And I thought it was a little funny. He just kind of agreed.
What was the punishment?
Yes.
The yeah, they do good. Those early scenes are a lot of fun. It's I think actually that was kind of what I feel like. I could be remembering because it's been years, but I feel like that was one of the selling points my dad used to have me watch it, was that comment about the chocolate being good for you. I was just like, I know that was one of his favorite lines, but I do tend to forget how much slapstick is in the movie overall, but especially the beginning.
Oh, it's very slapstick heavy.
Quite a bit of yeah.
Matter of fact, a lot of the runtime is not plot centric. It's longer because there's a lot of periods of slapstick and wordplay. Mostly slapstick though in this particular one. Because after this we get to him escaping as the government raids the building. And one thing I will have to say, for all the machinery he tries to use for the machine to get away.
Even in the future, nothing works.
I did think about that line a couple of times, especially they had the running gag with the guy who had the rocket launcher and the guy with a pump, and it never worked.
It always blew up in their face every time.
Well, no, the last time it blew up the vehicle behind them.
So that was a funny recurring gag.
Yeah.
He kept trying to get all these like machines to go, and he couldn't get them to work. And eventually he gets in this flying chair that doesn't fly. And ends up stuck in a tree. But eventually he goes in to hide in a thing that has these robot butlers. But what did y'all think of the whole escape scene there?
Oh, the escape scene. Well, that was kind of like spur of the moment ness, at least as far as they tried to do their best to trying to hide him and tell him what he needed to do and all that jazz. But the police came in. He had to go out on the edge of the visor for him. Oh, sorry. I refer to it as the visor for him, or because it kind of looks like that stupid building that they built downtown to think that they could fit people in to see stuff. When we went to see monster trucks at that fucking thing, those chairs were barely able to be sat in. But anyways, moving back to the movie, I liked how he just went out with the ladder, dropped down. Didn't he like grab a dune buggy?
He tried to grab there were different vehicles he grabbed to try and go, and the only thing that worked for him, well, worked being subjective, was that weird flying chair you actually see on the poster.
Yeah, and doesn't he call it like a Japanese thing? And he flips his arms like he's trying to fly. But he doesn't realize that them handle things will actually lift him off the ground. And I loved how he got him, how they went and looked for him, and he was right above them, stuck in the tree.
Right.
So the part.
Oh yeah, because he didn't realize. I think that he had to push those handles.
Yeah, to get off the
fly.
Right. He's like flapping his arms, like, yeah, that will work.
So the part where he disguises himself as the robot butler, I would say this is the heaviest Charlie Chaplin influence in the whole movie. Because I could see the whole scene played out like that in a Charlie Chaplin film. The way that he does it, even down to the weird orb thing and him getting high off the orb.
Supposedly, one of the inspirations for the film was that he wanted to do a silent film, and the idea of certain situations making it implausible to talk or making it dangerous to talk was one of the reasons he decided to do a sci-fi in the first place. But the robot definitely gave him an opportunity to do that sort of silent physical humor, but not necessarily have to be silent, you know? Yeah.
The words he had to use had to count at that point.
Right.
But, you know, it kind of there's some parts of this that feel like it comes out of Modern Times, that movie of Chaplin's. Especially the job he had threading the tape and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you get to be introduced to Diane Keaton's character, who you've got the kind of aloof artist types who are all kind of just wealthy and enjoying the bounty of pleasures that the future does offer, which of course, you know, a lot of the upper crust tend to not really have any issue with some of these types of dictatorships and stuff because, well, they're in there. I mean, even North Korea, a good example. I mean, there is a group of elites in North Korea that are treated quite well there. But I'm sure they're pretty aloof to the other people's suffering, though you don't really see much from anybody else. So, matter of fact, in truth, though the regime is said to be oppressive, you don't really see a lot of it other than they're trying to hunt the alien down.
Yeah.
Well, you do see that anything that threatens the status quo is very aggressively taken care of. Yeah.
Reprogrammed.
So it's like, as long as you keep your head down and don't ruffle feathers, don't make any noise, you probably would be fine, you know. But
and you see little touches like that where the leader's face is everywhere, as pictures on every like wall of all the buildings and stuff like that. And you definitely have his little stormtroopers that come in and do. But it is interesting how when he's delivered to Diane Keaton's character, she's like, I got to take him in to get his head changed. It's an ugly head.
Well, and I know he burns all the artists' clothing and whatnot, and that instant pudding moment.
Which I can tell you right now, my father loved that whole thing where he accidentally burns all of their like coats, because my father had a real hate on for the idle rich, so to speak. And you could tell these people were probably trust fund babies who could afford to take ridiculous degrees, like in like a PhD in perform sex.
Right. There was some interesting stuff in that conversation that he was having with Luna about that. And what was the one I wanted to mention that amused me a lot? Well, for one, she's like, sex is different today. You see, we don't have any problems. Everybody's frigid.
Yes, I made sure I wrote that down.
Yeah. But no, I think my favorite interchange probably was where she later on, she's like, do you want to perform sex with me? Perform sex? No, I don't think I'm up to a performance, but I'll rehearse with you if you like. And then he's like, machine, I'm not getting into that thing. I'm strictly a hand operator. Yeah, so it's like, I don't like a lot of these. Like, I don't like anything with moving parts that are not my own. Like a lot, that whole interchange, that's like pure Woody Allen. Like a lot of this stuff is, if you've seen any of his movies, you've heard lines like some of these. But what's that?
And one thing I also did find interesting. Now, this is just more of a. I guess this goes to the theme of Antique April. Is it does have the TV signing off message for the day.
True.
And I am old enough to have remembered where TV did sign off for the night, and it was some patriotic thing on the TV. Not very different from this. Leading it out.
Another thing that fits the theme is all the jokes they make about how old he actually is.
Yes.
Like he had one, he's like, I haven't seen my analyst in 200 years. He was a strict Freudian. If I've been going all this time, I'd probably almost be cured by now.
Yes, I had to write that down because I don't have any liking of Freud. So
I know.
That's
I know
correct.
You're not a fan of his.
Matter of fact, the way Freudian therapy was supposed to work, he would still not be cured because it's supposed to be indefinite.
Right. Well, I like how he said almost be cured, but or like, where she's like, it's hard to believe you haven't had sex for 200 years. And he's like, 204 if you count my marriage. It's like, yeah, there was some good ones at that, you know.
But he ends up breaking free after the whole thing where he's in the robot factory. He ends up getting one guy knocked out by using a thing of blue cheese, which I did find that funny, actually. But kidnaps Diane Keaton's character.
It was a waste of good blue cheese, though.
And but ends up having one of my favorite scenes of this. That as a kid, I loved where he goes to the farm where they get the giant fruit, and he ends up taking somebody out with a giant strawberry. I peed a man insensible with a strawberry.
Right. I do have to say though that the fact that he went ahead and peeled one of the bananas just so that he could have a massive banana slit gag, that definitely seemed like that was old school comedy. That would have not been out of place in a Chaplin film either, I think.
Yeah. But and he did bring the banana and a giant piece of celery.
Right.
But Diane Keaton did agree to take him to the to the point where he's supposed to meet up with the resistance. La Resistance. But she, of course, does try to turn him in, and ends up finding out that, oh, no, you've been exposed to the alien, so we're going to wipe you too, which at that point she was like, okay, well, I got no choice. I got to side with him at that and do this. But what did y'all think of the whole Diane Keaton? Actually, did y'all have anything about the fruit farm or anything like that?
What did you think, Tammy?
What was that?
What did you think about the fruit farm?
I want a strawberry that big. That would make a lot of strawberry shortcakes.
Yes, it would.
I'd love a big strawberry or a big banana like that. I would even like the celery as long as I had like some veggie dip to go along with that.
Well, you can keep the celery.
So Jacob, what do you think? You think that we could utilize science to make veggies and fruit that big?
I don't know why you need to. It's the kind of. There are a bunch of issues with that. It's kind of fun. It certainly makes for good sight gags, but like if we're talking actual celery that's that big or anything like that, and you definitely wouldn't be harvesting it that way. If it was being raised and harvested that way, I'd be like, yeah, no, I don't think I want that.
Very, very inefficient.
Well, inefficient, yes, but also just like, what the fuck?
Let's see here. Well, as they flee the second time from the troops that she called, because they had gone back to her place briefly, and that's where she called the cops. They find an old Volkswagen, and I will admit, I will attest to this. Those Volkswagen Beetles, if they were preserved well enough, were near indestructible. I doubt it would have started after 200 years, but you know,
they would probably have to do some repair. You know, it's like I had a Volvo once. Like, I know how that German engineering works. It's like, if you are ready and willing to do frequent work on the car, yeah, you keep that alive indefinitely.
But they did have one dig at the NRA. It's like,
yeah,
NRA sticker. It's like, the NRA, a group that helped people get guns to shoot citizens.
yeah, exactly. I was looking for that quote because I saw that earlier. That was pretty fun. But yeah, she's reading. I guess she's trying to read a bumper sticker that was on the car. Yeah. What was it? Register commies, not guns. Yeah. He's like, oh, he was probably a member of the National Rifle Association. That was a group that helped criminals get guns so they could shoot citizens. It was a public service.
But it was when they go back to the house after they dispose of the car, for which I don't even understand why they bothered doing that. But you know, they got back to the original house of the scientist that he was at before, and that's when the whole like she offers to perform sex with him,
right,
with the everybody's frigid line. But he ends up, but they end up getting separated. He ends up sending her off with a pistol to the resistance, and he gets captured because he decided to hide in the orgasmatron, and it got turned on.
That was fun. And then, of course, they dragged him back to give him citizenship.
Yeah, they brainwashed him, and it was a very odd brainwashing technique. But
oh, the Miss America pageant.
Yeah, he was Miss Montana.
Yes, because that is fully plausible and believable, and he would never have any reason to doubt it.
Right. Of course, they had him like shedding tears, like he had actually won or whatnot. Of course, when they got him all brainwashed after that, he was like all into this blonde.
Well, he was having a good old time.
How did you like that confessional?
Approved. I was like, absolved.
Absolved. So anything that you sin, you can get absolved for everything.
Right.
Well, I'm sure there would be certain things that get the authorities called on you, but little things like that, probably more like, well, if he looks at it as a sin, then we're still in the good. But he had a pretty good little life started out for him. He had a job. He had his own little robotic dog that was kind of useless.
Yeah, and he could actually shag with one of his employees.
So yeah, he was doing pretty good for himself. But Diane Keaton, who found the rebels toughened up.
It was kind of the lead guy. He's kind of like a Robin Hood kind of character.
Right.
Well, he's your typical communist revolutionary leader.
Right.
But a lot of the play there doesn't particularly portray them as the best of good guys. Matter of fact, Woody Allen constantly is jealous of the dude because he's much more handsome than him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He says something to the effect he's got muscles from clear across his chest.
But yeah,
And of course, he sees her locking lips with him, and she's like all excited about his plan.
Mm-hmm.
but they mentioned this Operation Aries all throughout, but we finally figure out that what it is that the leader was actually blown up in an assassination attempt, but the nose survived.
Or they still had it at any rate, and they were going to attempt to clone him from it.
Yes.
Because reasons. Yeah.
And they have quite a slapstickish whole thing where they get the nose and escape with it. I like how they pose as doctors and he slips it under his mask.
Hold up. What's that under your mask? What are you talking about?
Right.
What mask? Oh, this one.
But what did y'all think of the whole operation once they got him out and ready to go?
Interesting.
Yeah.
The interesting thing here, though, he has you might say, a robot assistant. And I'm pretty sure this is the one they call Evil Robot, right?
It's like a supercomputer that's in there that's supposed to be like assisting them with the cloning.
Right.
And you would think that the doctors above and the computer, the supercomputer, would know that these two are not the doctors.
Right. Well, I want to mention the evil computer. I think the one that was helping them with the surgery, such as it is. I'm pretty sure that's the one they call the evil computer. It's actually voiced by Douglas Rain, who is known for playing HAL 9000 on 2001. So that was kind of an amusing little bit of casting there.
Cool.
But
actually, 2001, that came out before this, if I recall.
Yeah, 68.
So, you know it was put in like that on purpose.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
There are a lot of references and little things here and there that are fun to get. I mean, you had the two Jewish tailor robots.
Oh, geez, yeah.
Or even like the whole tape gag where he's using like the tape to lure himself in there, and Keaton can't figure out how to work it, so it's like pushing him all over the place. And then he gets in there, and it's just like filled with just tape. The room is filled with it.
Of course, then he gets a hold of he takes the gun and holds the nose up at gunpoint and says, "I will shoot it. Don't tempt me. I will shoot it."
Right.
He gets out into the hallway, and they're like, "He won't do it. You want to bet?" And of course, he pushes the trigger, and out pops a bang flag.
Right.
And then the movie ends with him kissing Keaton's character, with them liberating the nose. I felt like this was a very abrupt ending. But
yes, but as we said earlier, and actually this is really funny because just a few days ago online, I saw a list of the best final lines in movies. And I do think this movie should have been on that list because it's like they have this little interchange right there at the end. Like she's like, "Oh, I see. You don't believe in science, and you also don't believe that political systems work, and you don't believe in God, huh? Right. So then what do you believe in?" And he has this line: "Sex and death, two things that come once in a lifetime, but at least after death, you're not nauseous." That's the final line. I'm like, okay, that should have been on the list. But you're right. In terms of what actually happens, it is kind of an abrupt ending. But, that's not unusual for those old comedies either.
Yeah.
A lot of them just kind of ended.
that's pretty much my biggest criticism of the plot. Is it is what it is. It's an old school comedy where it's a bunch of sketches kind of loosely draped together with this overarching plot, which definitely doesn't have a lot of importance overall. It's more of something that's just used to help with the sketches. And I've got nothing 100% against that, if that makes sense. But I do also understand like the, but I do find it like that as probably one of the things that would not be as easy to do these days, if that makes sense. I don't think they would be stringing them together like that now. I think they'd feel like they have to have more than what they did. But what did y'all think of it overall as plot-wise?
Of the movie overall.
Yeah, the movie overall, just as a whole, like we've gotten through to the end.
I would have to say that for a futuristic moment, in time, that it wasn't bad. I mean, it could have been worse. I mean, it had its moments of comedy, and it definitely had its ideas of sex and in the world. In fact, with the orgasmic machine or whatnot, that kind of reminded me of the virtual boy thing in Demolition Man with Sandra Bullock, just a little bit because
I wouldn't be surprised if the people who did Demolition Man did not see this movie at one point in time.
So, it's definitely a dystopian world of some sort. I thought it was comical that their leader was the leader of the regime was already like basically dead. And if he wasn't, I'm not sure that the cloning would have worked in the end to begin with, but it was comical to think that all that was left was his nose, so that part of it is kind of mad caperish. And so overall, I thought it wasn't a bad look at a dystopian world from, a somewhat comic relief look at it. I mean, it could have been more zany. It could have had more nudity, but I don't think it really needed that. So
I thought it was really interesting. A lot of the comedy was really off, and I liked some of the innuendos and like those one thing, like tobacco is not good for you and things like that. That was just like, what, so interesting to think what could actually be good for you in 200 years from now. Really?
You're gonna have two coming out of them.
Indeed. But I will say that out of all things, oh, by the way, Jacob, do you have anything else to say before we move on?
No, I guess as far as your question on the plot overall, it's a pretty bare bones plot. It's definitely more of a plot than there was in, say, Bananas or Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Sex, but it's still more of an outline for a series of tags and vignettes than the kind of really, really in-depth story he started doing later on.
Yeah.
But overall, though, it does work pretty well. It's a good basic plot. It's a good basic premise, and apparently he originally wanted to make 2 movies and split it into 2 parts, and the first one would have probably been a lot more serious and character driven and what have you, and they wouldn't go for it. So,
Man, I think if this was done today by Woody Allen, it would be a very different film.
oh, no doubt about it. His films have absolutely gotten darker over the years. They're still, I don't know, is he still making them?
Well, in theory, he's finished. He's finished his swan song. If he doesn't decide to come back to it again. And,
oh yeah, I mean, because no one ever stays retired.
yeah, but I mean, it's not Rifkin's Festival. It's the one after that. That's the last one, but I can't remember what it's called.
Well, there's one called Coup de Chance that I guess came out last year.
Yep, that's it. That's the last one he's done.
I didn't even know about that one. I need to.
That's also, that one might stand to be, even though it's got a 6.4, I think there's reasons for that. From what I've heard, it's actually one that could be right up there, because I've heard a lot of amazing things about that one.
Okay.
Very different from Rifkin's Festival. But I've heard a lot of good things on the circuits and stuff like that about Coup de Chance.
Yeah, the last one I saw was Wonder Wheel, and that was good. It was much longer.
To me, he hasn't had like anything that I would consider really, really good since Blue Jasmine.
That was excellent. But that, of course, and actually there are certain things he keeps coming back to. Blue Jasmine was considered a loose retelling of Streetcar Named Desire. Cate Blanchett's character was, I think, a riff on Blanche DuBois.
Oh, yeah.
This movie actually has Woody taking the Blanche character and Diane Keaton taking on the Marlon Brando role of Stanley. And seeing Keaton do a Brando impression actually was pretty funny. Not that it really made a lot of sense narratively that she would be familiar with that thing. But then again, maybe the Revolutionaries, maybe Streetcar was one of their treasured artifacts or some such.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense. But yeah.
Oh, the whole of it just that was the movie itself. Definitely, this one definitely shows that it was in his early wheelhouse, but he had gotten used to doing these slapsticky films by this point.
Right.
I will say the one about like the everything you always wanted to know about sex but were afraid to ask. That one's unapologetically vignettes.
They usually travel in pairs.
Yeah. But still very funny in a lot of ways. But I always found this one and Bananas to be probably my two favorites of his old school comedies. Though Take the Money and Run has definitely warmed up on me.
Right.
Thanks to Schusterman Levine. But with that being said, let's talk about production value. There's a lot of that 60s/70s vision of the future here with the space age looks and stuff like that. But what did y'all think? What did y'all think of the production value in this film?
Well, it was. I will have to say that the vehicles that they were driving around in was what they spent the money on, and maybe the makeup of making them into this robot. And I thought the robots were interesting, because they did seem like they were mechanic, but was there anyone like walking around underneath those things? Were they in fact like animatronic, or weren't they? I don't know whether they were or weren't, So those were interesting. I mean, it would be interesting to have a robot butler, but would they be kind of like your entertainment value in the future? Like, could they in fact like be sex robots at any given point in time? So I don't know. So.
Well, he was asking if there were female versions of them.
Yeah, he was.
Any others on the production value or production design?
Well, I thought the buildings were kind of interesting.
Yeah.
That really was that futurist look that they had back in those days.
Right.
Yeah.
The sorry. Go ahead.
You could see it in like the Jetsons and all sorts of things like that.
I mean,
Yeah.
I wish the strawberries and bananas and celery were kind of looked like they were a little bit more edible than they were. Like almost Willy Wonka-esque,
Right.
But other than that, I mean, they had to do what they needed to do to make it look like entertaining, and you could tell that they weren't really biting into those things. But man, did my imagination run wild if I wanted to eat like big, gnarly looking fruit, that would be it.
Good times. The as far as the production goes, again, the fruits, yeah, they left a little bit to be desired. And a lot of the stuff did look kind of cheap. You could definitely tell that this film did not have a huge budget. But a lot of it, given the overall tone, given what they seemed to be going for, you didn't really need like state-of-the-art production. You know what I mean? And actually, one thing that is kind of a hallmark of even the later Allen films is that he usually doesn't spend a huge amount on the, I guess you could say, the trappings, the they do oftentimes take place in locations that probably require a little bit of extra funding to get hold of. There usually is really, really solid set design, set decoration. But it's rare that you look at a Woody Allen film and think this must have been a big budget film.
Well, I mean, it didn't need to for what it did.
Yeah, exactly.
It
Usually
did things to make it believable enough, and that was all they needed.
Yeah, exactly. And for this one, again, a little bit of less than accurate visuals fits the tone, and it fits. I mean, of course, you look at, again, we keep coming back to those old films from the silent era. Most of those can't be accused of looking super accurate either. So I think that he probably had that in mind and was fine with that. So yeah.
Well, why don't we move on to music? Normally, this is a huge strength for Allen.
Yes.
And it has a nice little jazz tune, but they reuse the same tune over and over again here. So there's not a lot of variety as far as I remember hearing.
As far as variety, you may be correct, but a couple really notable things here. One, we've got a futuristic sci-fi film with a Dixieland jazz score. and that disconnect is really fun, and it kind of adds to the overall good times. And it's also worth noting that Woody Allen is a well-known jazz nut. And he is a musician, and he did play the clarinet on this score, which was pretty impressive. I thought I don't know how many movies he's actually played on musically, but he's done a few. What's up?
To this day, he still does play in a band, which
Yeah. And I believe at one point he did do a proper documentary, Wild Man Blues. Yes, he did a documentary, or no, he didn't direct it. He was featured in it, where it was actually about his touring and playing the clarinet. And then, of course, the movie that for the longest time was my favorite Woody Allen film is still one of my favorites. Sweet and Low Down was a documentary that was or a mockumentary that was a straight up love letter to jazz, and that featured him doing interview segments as a jazz fan. So he's got a long history with it, and I have always loved the soundtracks to his movies. I have the soundtrack to Sweet and Low Down, and I think I have a couple of others too. I think I have the Manhattan soundtrack somewhere. And I don't think there ever was a physical release for this one, but if not, it's a shame. But
all right. Well, I guess that's all she wrote.
Well, I did have one more thing on the production. I backed off for a second in case anyone else had more music stuff, but
okay.
I do have to say, especially in light of some information you shared with me this afternoon, this movie, the idea that put forward by this film of the future has a lot of interesting stuff to it, and much of it might be plausible. But honestly, this is much more plausible for 30 to 40 years from now than it is for 150 years from now. And one of the reasons why is there's no freaking way we'll still have that much green space in 150 years. The movie was entirely too green to be accurate in that, which I hate to say that. It pains me to say it, but I just don't see that happening.
So we'll be lucky to have Forrest at all in 200 years.
Yeah. Jeez. At the rate we're going.
Desert planet.
But yeah, I just thought I would mention that was one area that he probably got wrong when it came to his vision of the future. But I think the idea of, look, in the future, nothing works, that was probably dead on.
All right. Well, that was Sleeper. I guess we'll wrap up this one by, looking at these types of films, this kind of slapsticky comedy type film. What is your favorite scene, and what is your favorite old school comedy film that's in this type of vein?
My favorite scene was the where they can go in and have an orgasm thing. So yeah, my favorite character, I guess, would be Woody Allen.
So what would be your favorite old school comedy, like old school slapsticky comedy?
I'm not sure at the moment.
All right. Well, we'll move on. How about you, Dave? Favorite scene, favorite old school slapsticky comedy?
Okay. I would have.
School meaning older than this.
I would have to say my favorite scene from Sleeper is when they infiltrate as doctors and end up stealing a nose of. I mean that is just bonkers, you know. So
The nose.
as far yep. Even though I like the sex stuff that's in here, I do like that aspect of the film. I would have to say favorite older comedy is probably the old Dark House of by William Castle.
Uh-huh. All right. How about you, Jake?
Favorite scene and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
If I had a favorite scene, it might be the one where he's going through the photographs and giving a quote unquote history lesson. And of course, the comments about what's actually good, I'll always remember that. Like the chocolate's actually good for you, and I'll always remember that part.
This has a lot of good one-liners.
And it does. It has a lot of really good one-liners. And if you were to try and pick a single best one-liner, that is tricky. I mean, again, that line at the end was one of the great. Another great one-liner it was like, "Do I believe in God? Yeah, I'm what you would call a teleological existential atheist. I believe that there's an intelligence to the universe, with the exception of certain parts of New Jersey." And if I remember correctly, Luna just looked at him like, "What are you talking about?" But the film is like loaded with those kind of. And again, I don't really find this to be his most hilarious movie, but it is one of the more consistently funny. If that it's like mid to lower level all the way through, rather than highs and lows of some of the films have. If that makes sense. And it's really hard to pick a lot of favorite parts, but I think probably that the scene, especially what he said about that watching the Wild World of Sports, that was hilarious. And you said, what was my favorite of
your favorite old school comedy taking place before this, of course?
Like if we're talking old school comedies, there are so many that are really good. And we've covered several of them on this channel. I mean, we covered a couple of Charles Chaplin films. We covered Sullivan's Travels. We covered at least one Marx Brothers film.
Yep.
And I guess if I was picking a favorite of the bunch, it might be The Great Dictator, but I would say that at least a couple of the Marx Brothers ones, like Horse Feathers and Duck Soup and A Day at the Races, are just absolute classics of hilarity. And Sullivan's Travels is pretty damn funny too. It Happened One Night, would fall into that. There are a lot of really good ones, and I guess I'll go with The Great Dictator. But I feel like this is more of a Marx Brothers comedy, so maybe Duck Soup if we're going with them. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, my favorite scene, I don't know. I think it's because of the nostalgia for it, but the scene with the giant fruit where he basically kicks somebody's butt with a giant strawberry. It just, I don't know, it just hits.
Indeed.
As far as my favorite old school comedy, it has been and probably ever shall be Monkey Business by the Marx Brothers, which is the only one we've covered on this show. One of these days we'll have to cover more.
was Monkey Business. I couldn't remember which one. Yeah.
I was the one who put it forward.
Yeah. You are right. We do need to cover more of them. This month would have been a great opportunity, but whatever.
So, well, at least you can say this one pulled off of those.
Indeed.
But I guess that's it for Sleeper.
Mm-hmm.
And I hand this back to Dave.
All righty. Well, let's go around and tell everyone who we are and a little bit of what we do. I guess. Tammy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I go on this channel and another with David, and talk about movies. And I have my own collection also. And when I'm not doing that, then I'm at work, or in the summer I'm out playing with my car.
All righty. Heading over to you, Jake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
All right, I'm Kotobukijake. I am the occasional co-host of SeptumSin versus the World, where last week we did meet to discuss the anime based on the X-Men, so you can check that out. That was pretty good times. And I believe we have a bunch of stuff coming up soon, but I'm sure Brandon will be happy to talk about that. Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Michael says, what's your favorite Woody Allen film? I said earlier that for a long time it was Sweet and Low Down. I would also rank Match Point and Midnight in Paris and Annie Hall. Those four are my top four. I'm not positive which one's the number one. And so I keep pretty busy. I work full time. Try very hard to find enough time in the day to do everything I want to do, but doesn't go easily. But I always try to get a movie watched each week so I can join these folks for our discussions. And I look forward to seeing what other quote unquote antique films we have in store this month.
All righty. Heading over to you, Brandon. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, to answer the question, it's probably between Sleeper. Sleeper is only for nostalgia value. I'm not going to lie. I would say, though, if I was to look at all of the films today, I would probably say that Midnight in Paris is my favorite, just because it is executed so perfectly. It still astonishes me that later on he was able to do so well. But I have a lot of them I like. But yeah, SeptumSin versus the World. We like physical media. We film a show occasionally. But I'm busy with like 1.5 billion projects, which have left me unable to really film with Jake for that. That we are working on a series that will be debuting sooner than later. We have just wrapped up the 11th episode in the first 12 episode season. So we are getting closer to that release. But of course, the main thing right now is I have a film out, which is called Amityville Webcam. I wrote, I directed it, and I acted in it. And it is available on the link below. Also, it's actually got a lot of little things there. It's a nice little variety store. We have a DVD labeled Boris, which helps out one of our compatriots, Philippe. Some of his stuff from Dark Zone 13 and a lot of behind the scenes there. And a friend of the channel, Kyle Rappaport, his film with Douglas Godino, the Shekel Demon Project. You can get that on Blu-ray or DVD on the store. So lots of fun stuff in store by the store. And next week's is Dave's suggestion, so I'll just leave that to him.
All righty. And my name is David Strege. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us on this fantastic journey that we've been having. I just got done this last weekend and a little bit into last week, looking over the master copies of the Blu-ray and DVD of Tales of the Forgotten Act 1. So I do believe that they are ready to be almost released. So look out for a future date for when the film will be released. I've got to send out copies to my directors and all that jazz before I even make it available to others. So I will do that and let everyone know that has been waiting for a copy or looking for a copy to check it out. So other than that, I do moonlight on a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I do some pickup videos from time to time and some. I do also do another podcast on Sundays. So a lot of the episodes that we discuss movies happens on that channel, as well as doing some reviews from time to time. So thank you for listening. Have a great day, evening, or morning, wherever you are.
Dave.
And I do believe that we have another film that we're going to be discussing next week.
Yeah.
I believe it was the one that I suggested, isn't it?
Yep.
Indeed. And Dave, real quick, Dave, before you fully wrap up, I don't think you and Tammy answered the question, did you?
Oh, what was my favorite Woody Allen film?
Right.
I'm not sure because I have only seen 2.
Okay.
Like I said, when I look at Woody Allen, he's an oddball character. I have Brandon has introduced me to only the cusp of Woody Allen films, and I know he sent a lot of them my way as he upgrades. So I do plan on checking out more of his films, but a lot of times when I watch a film, it ends up being one that we discuss anyways. So oftentimes that's the only time I have. So
Well, trust me.
Well,
more will be chosen in the future.
if there is an excuse for me to do so, I have an unwatched copy sitting here on the shelf of Zelig, and so you can bet I will want to watch that one sooner or later. Annie Hall is excellent, yes.
Annie Hall is excellently done. It's but actually his chemistry with Diane Keaton is very good, very strong.
Indeed. Apparently they're still friends after all these years, or at least that seems to be the case.
They are still friends.
I do need to do a deeper dive into Woody Allen just to see whether I would be entertained by any of his other films. It's hard for me with as oddball as he is to get into some of his antics.
Like I say, as it goes on, the early films are more like this, but trust me, they can get deadly serious or less oddball. Good example of one that, for instance, Zelig is a good example. It's a little bit oddball, but not like this oddball.
I do have that one. I picked that one up from Dollar Tree. So,
but if you want one that's a happy-go-lucky time, just watch Cassandra's Dream.
Don't have that one.
Jacob will tell you it's probably one of his greatest, most uplifting comedies.
Oh no, Cassandra's Dream is one that I always put forward for an interesting, weird bit of thing. The late Tom Wilkinson plays a better Carmine Falcone in that movie than he did when he played Carmine Falcone in Batman Begins.
It's got to be probably one of the darkest films I have ever seen, and that's it's not the darkest, but it is one of the darkest films I have seen.
Yeah, Cassandra's Dream is bleak. It is bleak.
So the movie
it's the Death Note of Woody Allen films.
Yes, the Manhattan is well done.
I agree with Manhattan. Yeah,
but definitely creepy. Yes,
it is beautifully shot, and it does have great music. Yeah.
Well, it's like that short in New York Stories. That's not his, by the way. The one that was done by, gosh, what is it? God, who is the guy? I can't think of Scorsese. The Scorsese short.
Yeah.
That one is also creepy, where you got the artist backing up with the teenager.
The Woody Allen one in that anthology was hilarious.
Oh, that was hilarious. Not creepy at all.
Yes.
Edifice Rex was the name of the of that one.
New York Stories is interesting. It's an anthology with a film each from Woody Allen, Francis Ford Coppola, and Martin Scorsese, and they're all solid films. But you're right, the one was a little different.
But that just goes. But tell you the truth, that's almost all of these auteurs were creepy as heck back in the 60s and 70s. But that's how it is. Thank goodness for some modern sensibilities these days, I guess.
Ready. So the movie that I put forward for Antique April was a 1966 American horror film directed by Leslie Stevens, who was a front runner for the Outer Limits TV series later on. But he directed a film starring William Shatner called Incubus. What's interesting is that it's entirely done in Esperanto, which is completely different than Spanish.
It is hilarious what little I've seen of it, William Shatner doing the Esperanto.
And from what I understand from people who actually speak Esperanto, this was a very badly done Esperanto from an outlook of people who actually speak it naturally,
Yeah.
So, but it is an interesting film. So, definitely check us out next week. So it'll be interesting. I've got to unearth my copy anyways. So
thanks for watching. Definitely. We plan on going to the UK. Well, not all of us, but me and my wife plan on going to the UK sometime in the near future. So it'll be kind of cool to go over there. That Nothing But a Man. Interesting. I am not as familiar. What about the rest of y'all?
I have not seen it. But we'll definitely
haven't seen it.
What's that?
Recommendation under advisement.
Nothing But a Man.
I don't know that I've seen that either. No.
Definitely worth checking out.
Alrighty. So that being said, everyone, once you go out and see this film, just go see it. Let us know down in the comments what you thought of the film, what you thought of our discussion, and we'll see you next week here on Inside Movies Galore.
All right.
Michael, thank you for watching. It's always entertaining to have someone come along and help comment. But that being said, everyone say good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Mm-hmm.